Across 800 years of recorded history, the same pattern keeps repeating. A manuscript appears, scholars panic, and within months it is sealed away. Pages are blacked out, names are removed, entire chapters erased without explanation. The book is labeled dangerous, heretical, destabilizing, and the person who tried to study it disappears from the record. From giant Bibles said to be written in a single night, to celestial manuals that treat reality like machinery, to rituals demanding months of total isolation, they are not destroyed by fire or by time. Instead, they are locked away in the deepest vaults. But here's what no one talks about. These books were not banned because they were foolish. They were banned because they challenged who gets to control knowledge. Because once a method is written down, it can no longer be contained. Across continents, across religions, across empires, the same decision is made: silence it forever from the public eye. And at number 3, you'll see the book that didn't just question heaven. It attempted to rewrite spiritual law itself. But before we open any of them, we need to separate what is documented from what is legend. If you were given 1 hour, alone, with any one of these books, and no consequences, which one would you open? Because history shows something strange. The most heavily guarded knowledge is rarely the most fictional. It is the most powerful. If you want more investigations like this, where we separate myth from suppression, subscribe, because the next archive is already waiting. Before we open any of these books, we need to draw a line, because some of what you're about to hear is documented history, and some of it is legend. Layered on top of that history, where records exist, I'll show you what we can verify. Where the story drifts into rumor, I'll tell you that too. Because mystery is powerful, but credibility is stronger. Many of these books were officially condemned. Some were listed in banned indexes. But whether they were truly dangerous or simply inconvenient to power is the question we're about to test. In 1990, archivists at the Bavarian State Library, they opened a sealed vellum manuscript that was not handled in over a century. Catalogued as Codex Latinus 849, it carried no dramatic title to speak of. No title marked its cover. No identification beyond the library's official code. Only a technical description in Latin was recorded on the inner page. Liber incantationum, exorcismorum, et fascinationum variarum. Today, it is known by a more unsettling name than its original label. It is the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, a book of forbidden procedure. Scholars date this unsettling manuscript to around the year 1500, tracing the origins back to the cusp of the Renaissance era. But what truly makes it different from other grimoires is not just its age. Its contents reveal a method that goes beyond simple historical record. In truth, the most significant part of the book may be the empty spaces. These voids on the page suggest a chilling purpose for the reader. Unlike most grimoires, this manuscript does not simply list invocations and prayers. It moves past the theoretical and into a very specific type of dialogue. It structures these ancient invocations as direct and structured interrogations. Lines of questioning are laid out as if the book itself were a witness stand. Dozens of scripted questions are written directly into the aged pages of the manual. Questions like, where is buried the silver tongue of Saint Maurice? And beneath each of these unsettling questions, a space was left blank, waiting for a voice to speak from the shadows and fill the silence, as if the author truly expected answers to be written in at a later time. The preparation for these responses is clear in the careful layout of the vellum. The margins are filled with repeating containment symbols and arcane sigils, Every edge of the paper is reinforced with these protective marks of containment. These drawings were not decorative, but strictly protective in their intent, designed to shield the user from the very entities they were questioning. Some pages carry the residue of past rituals, wax, oil, and iron-rich staining, evidence that these procedures were not just read, but physically enacted. Unlike more theatrical occult texts, this one reads like a dry legal procedure. The cold efficiency of the writing suggests a professional approach to the unknown. It documents the time, the conditions, and the strict dismissal protocol. No detail was too small for the practitioner of this manual to record. In many ways, it is less a book of worship than a set of instructions. The silence of the room matches the silence left on the manuscript's pages, and more a manual for extraction, designed to pull secrets from the void. A tool for the relentless pursuit of hidden knowledge and lost truths. The Catholic Church banned this manuscript in the 16th century. For centuries, it remained hidden within the vaults of the library. It was condemned, not because it worshipped demons in the traditional sense, but because of the dangerous authority it claimed over the spirits. The Church feared it because it presumed to question the dark entities, demanding answers instead of offering the usual prayers or sacrifices. And perhaps more importantly than the questions themselves, there was a belief that these questions could actually be answered. Someone truly believed that answers were possible in this life. A conviction that the truth could be interrogated out of the darkness. Today, access to this manual is strictly restricted by the library, locked away from the public eye for the safety of the curious. The information within is not erased from history, but it is kept hidden. Behind heavy doors and digital security, it remains forever contained within the shadows of the Bavarian State Library, waiting for a time that may never come again. But the next book doesn't interrogate spirits. It attempts to engineer reality itself. A new manual for a new type of power which we will explore next. Long before modern science separated physics from mysticism, a manuscript emerged that treated the universe as a programmable system, originally written in Arabic as Gayat al-Hakam, and later translated into Latin under the name Picatrix. It appeared in 10th to 11th century Andalusia, at the crossroads of Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge. It was not written by one author, but compiled from dozens of lost works. And its core idea was radical, that reality could be influenced through precise alignment of thought and cosmic forces. Each planet was described not as a myth, but as a source of measurable influence. Specific metals, specific herbs, specific hours of the day, constructed into talismans, built like devices. The language reads less like prayer and more like engineering protocol. If alignment is correct, the effect will follow. When the Latin translation spread through Europe, the Church reacted quickly. Picatrix was banned, condemned for subverting divine order, because it implied something dangerous, that the human mind was not merely obedient to the cosmos, but capable of calibrating itself to it. One section even describes the construction of animated idols, objects infused with consciousness through planetary exposure. Modern readers notice something unsettling. Its logic resembles systems thinking, centuries before the scientific method matured. Even Renaissance thinkers studied fragments of it, not to worship, but to understand. Picatrix was never fully erased. It was copied, smuggled, studied quietly, because it didn't promise miracles. It promised mechanics, a structured way to view the cosmos. And mechanics can be tested, and anything testable threatens authority. Because if reality follows laws, then the next book didn't try to align with those laws. It tried to command what lived beyond them. If Picatrix treated reality like a machine, the next book treated the unseen world like a hierarchy. Known as the Key of Solomon, this manuscript circulated across Europe for centuries in multiple versions. This is the Key of Solomon, attributed, perhaps mythically, to the biblical king himself. But regardless of authorship, its structure was precise. The book does not begin with invocation. It begins with geometry. The foundational core of the work, it begins with geometry. Circles must be drawn at exact proportions to maintain stability. Circles must be drawn. Names must be written in specific sequence. The ritual must occur at the correct planetary hour. Even the instrument used to draw the circle is specified in the text. Even the instrument. If any element is misaligned, the text warns, the structure fails. Unlike other grimoires, this one is obsessed with containment. It lists 72 spirits, each paired with a seal. Not for worship, nor is it for any form of negotiation. Not for worship. It is for command, absolute and total control. For command. The summoned entity stands outside the circle, within a geometric boundary. The operator remains safely inside the boundary. The operator remains inside. Authority is derived not from fear, but from structured hierarchy. And power flows downward through correctly invoked names. The Church condemned many versions of it. Yet it persisted, copied quietly across centuries by dedicated scribes. Yet it persisted, because it offered something unusual. Not chaos, but a system of rigid rules. Not chaos. Structure, the defining element of the ritual. Structure, not surrender, but dominance over the unseen. Not surrender. And that is where the next book becomes dangerous. Because instead of drawing circles to contain power, it proposes signing a contract with it. Signing a contract. If the Key of Solomon built walls of geometry, the next book removes the walls entirely, first appearing publicly in 18th century France. It carried a name that did not hide its intent. Le Dragon Rouge, the Red Dragon. Unlike earlier grimoires, this manuscript does not emphasize containment. It emphasizes agreement, a pact. The structure reads less like poetry, and more like a legal document. There is an offer, there is a signature, and there is an exchange. The text names 4 principal entities, arranged like executives within a hierarchy, each associated with domains of influence. But what disturbed authorities was not the symbolism. It was the promise of dominion. Health, influence, prosperity, all in exchange for loyalty. By the 19th century, church authorities actively sought copies. Police confiscations in France listed it among seized occult texts. And yet, no 2 editions were identical. The wording shifted, the diagrams evolved, and yet the structure remained, because this book reframed power, not as something granted, but as something negotiated. That shift alone was destabilizing. Because containment implies hierarchy, but a contract implies equality, and equality threatens systems built on control. And if the Red Dragon proposed a pact, the next book claims you don't need to negotiate at all. If the Red Dragon proposes a contract, the Grand Grimoire removes the contract entirely, first circulating in printed form in the 18th century. This text quickly earned a darker reputation. Unlike other grimoires, it does not frame its rituals as requests. Unlike other grimoires, it does not frame its rituals as requests. It divides itself into 2 books. Conte. The first describes preparation. Materials, timing, positioning. Conte. The second describes command. Conte. At the center of the manuscript stands a name. Lucifuge Rofocal. At the center of the manuscript stands a name, Conte, described as the administrator of infernal hierarchy. Conte, The text treats the unseen world as organized, bureaucratic, structured, conned. But unlike the Key of Solomon, the operator does not stand cautiously within containment. But unlike the Key of Solomon, Kant, he commands. Kant. The Grand Grimoire does not ask for permission. Kant. It assumes authority. Kant. The ritual structure positions the practitioner not beneath the hierarchy. Kant. But above it. Kant. This inversion explains the Church's response. Kant. The book was swiftly condemned and banned. Kant. Not because it described demons. Kant. But because it reversed hierarchy. Kant. It suggested authority could be seized. Kant. Yet like the others, it was never fully erased. Kant. It spread quietly across Europe. Kant. Because the idea it presented was intoxicating. No negotiation, no pleading, only command. Kant. And that psychological shift, from fear to dominance, Kant destabilizes systems built on spiritual submission. Kant. But the next book does something more dangerous than reversing hierarchy. Kant. It removes hierarchy entirely and replaces it with isolation, discipline, and psychological transformation. Because the Book of Abramelin does not offer immediate power. Kant. It demands months of silence. Kant. And that demand may be more destabilizing than any command. Kant. If the previous books promised control over unseen forces, the Book of Abramelin promises control over something closer. The operation begins and ends with yourself. Translated into English in the late 19th century by S.L. MacGregor Mathers. The manuscript itself traces back to the 14th or 15th century. Its central operation requires 6 months. 6 months of daily ritual. Perform your daily ritual prayer at sunrise. Return to the chamber and pray again at noon. And once again, perform the prayer at the hour of dusk. The practitioner must maintain a strict dietary discipline, shut the world out and enter complete seclusion. The goal is not immediate summoning. It is contact with what the text calls the holy guardian angel. Only after that alignment may command over lesser forces begin. The book contains dozens of structured word squares, geometric arrangements of language meant to bind intent. But here is where it becomes psychologically unsettling. The squares differ between editions. In these different versions, the very wording shifts. Some researchers suggest the text behaves like a mirror, reflecting the intention of the practitioner. The 6-month isolation is not theatrical. The isolation serves to restructure your perception. Every moment of your time becomes a ritual. In the quiet, your silence becomes authority, and the practitioner becomes the structure. The book offers no promise of immediate power. There is no room for negotiation with these forces. What remains is only a profound transformation. And if you step back for a moment, notice something. These books aren't about demons. They're about authority. Claiming a new authority over every structure. Claiming a new authority over every hierarchy. Claiming a new authority over perception itself. And the next book may be the most visually unsettling of them all, because it does not hide its symbol. If you're starting to see the pattern, stay with me, because the next 3 books shift from transformation to revelation. Some books fit in your hands. This one dominates the room, weighing over 165 pounds, nearly 3 feet in height, written in the early 13th century, most likely inside a Benedictine monastery in Bohemia. The manuscript contains the entire Latin Vulgate Bible, medical treatises, and historical chronicles. Every page appears to be written in the same hand. No visible corrections, no shifts in style. Experts estimate it would have required decades of sustained work. And then there is the image, a full-page portrait of the devil, placed opposite the heavenly city. Taken to Sweden in 1648, it remains today inside the National Library, in a climate-controlled vault. Legends claim it was written in a single night. History suggests something more extraordinary, an act of obsession. The Codex Gigas does not whisper rebellion, it presents it. The Sworn Book of Honorius does not summon demons. It does not bargain, it files an appeal. Each ritual begins with a sworn oath and ends with a legal clause of exit. The structure reads like litigation against heaven. 9 concentric circles are drawn, not as protection, but instead it functions as jurisdiction. The text positions the practitioner as an advocate, arguing before a silent divine court, demanding revelation, demanding access. Unlike previous grimoires, the Sworn Book frames divine knowledge as accessible by right, not granted by grace, but compelled through law. It was among the earliest works explicitly targeted for suppression, not because it worshipped something forbidden, but because it refused silence. Its final chapter is titled On the Absence of the Word, and the page is nearly blank, and only a symbol remains. The message is subtle but radical. If divine silence exists, it can be challenged, and systems built on unquestioned authority rarely tolerate legal challenge. But the next book goes further still, because instead of appealing to heaven, it introduces a third category entirely. Not angels, not demons, but entities described simply as missing. And once you introduce a third category, the entire structure of authority collapses. The previous book challenged divine silence. This one challenges the entire framework. Livre des Esprits, the Book of Spirits, lists 46 entities. They are not described as angels. They are not described as demons. They are categorized as something absent from both systems. Each name is paired with a glyph, and across surviving copies, the glyphs remain consistent, despite appearing in different regions centuries apart. The text refers to them as les absents, the missing ones, not fallen, not appointed, simply missing from the narrative. This introduces a third structure, and once you introduce a third category, binary authority fractures, the system breaks. The invocation method is equally unconventional. Instead of commanding with divine names, the book emphasizes tone and resonance, as if these entities respond not to hierarchy, but to alignment, a resonance in the dark. Engineering, geometry, contracts, legal appeals, and now, an entirely separate axis. This is no longer about summoning. It's about replacing the system completely, which explains the suppression, the fear. Copies were hidden, sealed, buried, because if heaven and hell are not the only poles, then authority is no longer centralized, and that is the psychological shift. Alternative structures exist. They are here. And once you realize that, you understand these books were never about demons. They were about structure. And the final book does not ask permission, negotiate, or redefine categories. It removes the need for all of them. The final book is not a manual. It is, in fact, a declaration. This is known as the Book of Honorius. Unlike the others, it does not operate within established structure. It redraws the map entirely. It describes entities that exist between circles, not fallen, not appointed, standing outside the system entirely. The language is not devotional, it is confrontational. It instructs the practitioner to bind resistance, to construct chambers without angles, to invert the constellations above, to open what it calls the region between. Notice the pattern one last time. It is about engineering and geometry, contracts, legal appeals, alternative categories, and now, revolt, not against heaven, not against hell, but against the idea that there are only two poles. Gatekeepers depend on binary systems, heaven or hell. It offers a choice, obedience or damnation. The Book of Honorius suggests something more destabilizing. That authority itself is constructed and can be bypassed. If these books are dangerous, it's not because they summon something. It's because they bypass gatekeepers. If you're still here, you see the pattern, not superstition, structure, subscribe for more. Next time, banned ideas. Across 8 centuries, across civilizations, knowledge has been a battleground. These books were banned, buried, or contained. Some were feared, some were revered, and some were hidden away in the shadows. For what they described, some documents carried the weight of law, and others carried the weight of a secret. For what they implied, and some books were so dangerous that they threatened to dismantle the very structure of our world. For the structure they dismantled. But strip away the legends. For a moment, imagine for a moment that you had access to the most forbidden knowledge in existence, to one of them, with no restrictions holding you back and no gatekeepers to stand in your way. The choice of what to read and what to believe would be entirely yours to make. No gatekeepers would be there to tell you what is right and what is wrong. You would be the master of your own destiny and the architect of your own reality. Imagine you were given just 1 hour to explore these hidden and forbidden texts. 1 uninterrupted hour to uncover the secrets that have been hidden for centuries. Which of these ancient and powerful books would you choose to open first? The choice you make might reveal more about you than the book itself ever could. The one that engineers reality? Would you choose the book that promises to unlock the secrets of the universe? The one that offers negotiation? Or perhaps the book that offers you the power to negotiate with the unknown? The one that claims command? Or the book that claims to give you ultimate command over the forces of nature? Or the one that rewrites the map entirely? Or the one that offers to rewrite the very map of your understanding and reality? Your answer to this question says something profound about your own nature. It reveals the hidden desires and the quiet ambitions that guide your every choice. This is not just about ancient superstition or long-forgotten myths and legends. It is about your own internal sense of authority and your own personal power. In the end, it is about who has the authority to decide what is true for you. And that is the most powerful and dangerous secret of all to understand. The silence of the ages is waiting for your answer to this ancient question. The forbidden books are waiting for someone with the courage to open them.